everyone, I'm really happy to see you back on my channel. In the previous episode, we witnessed a decision, one that was far from easy, yet carried so much hope. Hùng chose to move forward, not a safe step, not a smooth path, but a choice, full of risks, and filled with desire. He decided to invest everything he had, leaving himself with no clear way back, even borrowing more, just to gather enough resources to begin a new journey, a woodworking workshop, not just a job, but everything he poured into it, his belief, his expectations, and the future of his family. He partnered with June, someone he believed could build everything from nothing with him. Every document was prepared, every term was agreed upon. No rusing, no carelessness. Everything was clear, precise, like a firm statement that this was not a temporary decision. And then, when everything was completed, when the final signatures were placed, Hùng truly stepped into the game, a game where there was no room for hesitation. He put all his trust into it, holding nothing back, without doubt, only moving forward. In the beginning, everything went just as he had hoped. The workshop started taking shape, the space gradually formed, each area clearly defined. Every corner, every detail, carried his dedication. Machines were brought in one by one. New equipment. The first sounds echoed, not loud, but enough for him to feel that everything was falling into place. The first shipments of wood also began arriving. Each log, each batch, carefully checked, carefully arranged, like the first bricks, laying the foundation for the future he was chasing. Hùng didn't just stand and watch. He was involved in everything. After work, when others went home to rest, he began another cycle. During the day, he still fulfilled his duties at work, maintaining his responsibilities, not letting anything be affected. But when night fell, when the city grew quiet, that was when his time at the workshop began. Long evenings, tasks flowing one after another, no real time to rest, no true pause. Exhaustion was unavoidable. When he returned home, his steps grew heavier, his gaze deeper, yet deep inside, something still held him up. That was belief, a quiet belief, not expressed in words, but always present. He believed that if he just tried a little more, if he just endured a little longer, everything would change. His current life would not stay the same. The hardships, the pressure, would slowly be replaced by stability, by something better. Hoài Ca was by his side through it all. She didn't directly take part in the work, didn't appear at the workshop every day, but she saw everything. In her own way, she saw it through the smallest changes, through each night he came home later, through each moment he sat quietly, saying less than before. She saw his struggles clearly, without him having to say a word. His face, though still trying to appear normal, the tension could no longer be completely hidden. There were moments he smiled, but that smile was no longer as light as before. Not because he didn't want to, but because he was holding himself together to keep everything stable, so she wouldn't worry. Hoài Ca understood. Even if she didn't fully understand business, didn't grasp every number, every plan, she could feel it. She could feel the pressure building on his shoulders day by day. She could feel the effort stretching on, with no end in sight. She once gently said, Not to stop him, not to oppose him, but out of care. Don't push yourself too hard. A simple sentence, but carrying so much behind it. Concern, fear, that he was going beyond his limits. But Hùng only shook his head. No long explanations.
No justification.
Just a quiet response.
I'm fine.
I just need more time. That sentence. Not long, not complicated, yet it sounded like a promise. He didn't want to stop. He didn't want to turn back. He believed that everything he was doing had meaning, and that with just a little more time, a little more persistence, a little more endurance, the results would come. But then, after only a short time, when everything was still in its early stages, the first signs of instability began to appear. Not loud, not obvious at first, but subtle signals. Small, yet enough for the one involved to feel that something wasn't right. One morning, like any other day, Hùng arrived at the workshop early. The space was the same. The familiar sounds. The steady rhythm of work. Everything was running, just as he had worked so hard to maintain. But then, an unexpected presence shattered that stability. An inspection team from the authorities suddenly arrived. No prior notice, no warning signs, no time to prepare. Everything happened directly and decisively. The atmosphere in the workshop changed instantly, from normal rhythm to tension. No one said anything, but everyone felt it. The looks began to change. Movements slowed down. All attention turned toward the inspection team. Each batch of wood was opened, not carelessly, not rushed, but inspected thoroughly, carefully, step by step. Each type, each origin, was checked. No room for error. At the same time, documents were requested. Every file, every certificate, had to be presented. No missing pieces.
No delays.
No excuses accepted. Hùng stood there, watching everything. At first, he tried to stay calm, still believed everything had been prepared properly, that every process had been followed correctly. But as time went on, the feeling inside him began to change. A sense of uneasiness appeared, not clear at first, but growing stronger. He began to realize something was wrong. Not just a passing thought, but a concern, with reason behind it. And then, the moment he feared most arrived. When the initial inspection results were announced, a portion of the wood in the workshop was identified as having unclear origin, no valid documentation, not meeting legal requirements for circulation. Those words didn't need to be loud, yet heavy enough to make everything pause. The surroundings seemed to freeze. No more machine sounds, no more working rhythm, only silence. Hùng stood still, didn't react immediately, not because he didn't understand, but because he couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe what he had just heard. Couldn't believe that what he had trusted was now showing problems. His eyes slowly turned toward Jung. A look, not just a question, but a search for answers. An answer clear enough to explain everything happening. But Jung reacted very differently.
No panique. No confusion.
No sign of surprise. Instead, calm. A calmness so unusual, it felt out of place. Must be a mistake. Jung said, His voice wasn't loud, not tense, as if it were just a small issue, something that could be fixed. But that calmness made Hung even more uneasy, because in this situation, that kind of calm didn't feel reassuring. Instead, it made everything harder to understand. And then, what followed gave him no time to think. A formal request to cooperate was issued immediately after. No longer just inspection, no longer an internal matter of the workshop, but something else, more serious, more defined, and legal in nature. Hung was required to report for questioning, a request that could not be refused, could not be delayed. At that moment, he understood clearly. Everything had changed. This was no longer a normal business issue. No longer about. Hoai Ca looked at him with just one glance. A very brief moment. She understood. No need to ask much. No need to wait. She knew. Something had happened. Not something small. Not something that could be ignored. What happened? She asked. Her voice was very soft, as if afraid to break the silence surrounding them. But inside, her concern was clear. Not rushed, not overwhelming, but enough that he couldn't avoid it. Hung didn't answer right away. He stood there, as if trying to organize everything. Not because he didn't want to speak, but because he didn't know where to begin. A silence stretched, not too long, but enough to feel the weight in his thoughts. And finally, he spoke, slowly, leaving nothing out, hiding nothing. Every detail, every event of the day, he told it all. From the moment the inspection team arrived, to every step of the process, every request, every conclusion. His voice wasn't loud. There was no panic, but it carried a weight, hard to describe. Each sentence seemed to bring a piece of pressure and place it between them.
Hoài Ca listen.
Without interrupting, without cutting him off, just complete focus on everything he said. But the more she listened, her expression changed from calm to tense, not because she didn't understand, but because she was beginning to realize the seriousness of it. Unclear origin would. What does that mean? She asked again. Not just a question, but a confirmation, as if she wanted to be sure that she hadn't misheard, that what he said was exactly what it was. Hung shook his head, a slight shake, but filled with helplessness. I don't understand either. The documents were all complete before, he said. No further explanation, no attempt to justify, because even he was in a state without clear answers. The house, which was meant to be a place to return to rest, to find peace, now felt completely different. The space hadn't changed, but the atmosphere was heavier than ever. No one spoke further, not because there was nothing to say, but because they didn't know what to say next. Only thoughts remained, each with their own thoughts, but all revolving around the same issue. Hoai Ca sat there, beside him, but her mind was pulled in many directions. She was worried, but not about money, not about what had been invested, not about the loans, but about Hung. She was afraid. Afraid that what was happening would not stop here. Afraid he would be dragged into it. Afraid legal issues would pull him into something even more difficult. And most of all, she was afraid he might lose his job, the one he had protected for so many years. Those thoughts didn't need to be spoken. but were clear. In her eyes, in the way she looked at him. She reached out and held Hung's hand tightly. Not a grand gesture, not anything extraordinary, but very clear. A presence, a reassurance. No matter what happens, I'm still here. Her voice was soft. No emphasis. No long explanation, but enough to touch the deepest part of his emotions. Hung fell silent, not because he was surprised, but because he understood that when everything was becoming difficult, there was still one thing that hadn't changed. Someone staying, someone standing beside him, unconditionally. That moment needed no more words, yet held so much. And then, as the night passed, as a new day began, before Hung could steady his thoughts, something else happened. Something he didn't expect. Not from the outside, but from the very person standing with him in this project. Dương started to change. No more proactive calls. No more frequent discussions like before. The connection between them began to loosen. Messages were no longer replied to quickly. Calls were no longer answered right away. His attitude was no longer the same. No more clear coordination. No more shared effort to solve the problem. Instead, there was avoidance. Not direct, not obvious at first, but enough to notice. A change that couldn't be denied. And then, in the next meeting, when everything needed clarification, when responsibility had to be defined, Jung said one sentence. A sentence. Not long, not complicated, but with massive consequences. I'm just the supplier. Verifying the origin is your responsibility. That sentence carried no hesitation, no further explanation, yet it felt like a boundary, a separation, and also a shifting of responsibility entirely onto Hung. At that moment, Hung said nothing, didn't react immediately, but inside was a shock. Not just because of what was said, but because of who said it. The person he had trusted, the person he had signed with, started with, and now was standing in a completely different place. A place that made everything no longer the same. Everything was no longer as simple as before. What once felt clear, something he could grasp, something he could trust, now was gradually becoming tangled. Not a sudden change, but layer by layer, being uncovered. And the deeper it went, the harder it became to see an end. The problems that appeared were no longer separate, no longer isolated, but began to intertwine, making everything more complicated than ever. Hùng stood in the middle of it all, no longer in the position of someone in control, no longer the one leading the situation, but slowly becoming someone being pulled in. Each development drew him further away from what he once believed. Trust, the very thing he had placed from the beginning, now was no longer as solid. It hadn't completely collapsed, but it was no longer intact. It began to shake, not because of a single event, but because of everything that had happened. From the unusual signs, from the inspection results, from Jung's change in attitude, all of it combined. What he once thought was certain, was right, was under control, now became unclear. No more clear boundaries, no more simple answers. Every question that appeared brought even more questions. And in the middle of all that, Hung was not just a businessman. He wasn't simply someone in business, facing risks, but also someone within the system, someone who understood clearly the regulations, the limits, and the consequences. Because he understood, he could feel even more clearly the seriousness of the situation. This was not just a problem to solve, but a risk, a very real risk, gradually revealing itself. If it couldn't be clarified, if it couldn't be proven, then the consequences would not stop at material loss. They could affect the very path he had chosen, affect his job, his position, everything he had built. And then, a question began to form, not only in his mind, but within everything happening. Could Hung prove his innocence? Could what was happening be brought to light? Or would everything slip further out of control? Those shipments of wood, things that once seemed like simple materials, had now become the center of it all. No longer just goods, but a problem, a big question. Was it simply a mistake? A misunderstanding? In the inspection process? In the paperwork? Or something else? Something prepared beforehand? A setup he never knew about? Those possibilities no one could confirm right now, but that uncertainty itself made everything more concerning. And in everything that was happening, it wasn't just Hung.
Hoài Ca
Was still there, not standing outside, not separate, but witnessing, feeling every small change. She saw the tension in him, the longer silences, the thoughts he never spoke out loud. She understood that things were no longer simple, that the man she loved.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện về Hoài Ca và Hùng nha mọi người. Trong câu chuyện hôm nay thì Hoài Ca và Hùng gặp phải một vấn đề, đó là về vấn đề về xưởng gỗ. Sau một thời gian làm ăn thì xưởng gỗ của Hùng xảy ra vấn đề là anh bị điều tra khi buôn gỗ lậu. Sửa lại cái này. Bây giờ thì mình vẫn đang làm ảnh với tiêu đề thôi, chưa có trong. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau.